Hey everyone, this is Chase Beach with InsurGrid. I am here with Joe Worrall, my uncle Joe Worrall, who is the president of corporate risk at Hauser Insurance Broker Services. Joe, thanks for jumping on with me.
Yeah, no worries, Chase. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And where are you calling in from?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, in my kitchen.
Right, and you got some snow there, right?
Got a lot of snow. Yeah, we got about 10 inches out there right now.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. We're doing every week. We want to interview different people in the industry and just learn more, about your experience and what you see in the market, in the insurance industry, and what agents should be thinking about, and how do companies like InsurGrid play into that role? Because we all know that there is a place for the agent. The agent is still very important in this world of insurance with all sorts of insurtechs. And so excited to talk with you today. But to start it off, would love just to learn more about how you got into the industry and, maybe some changes that you've seen in the industry. And then we'll talk about what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, about 41 years ago, I had a buddy who actually worked for Chubb. And Chubb said that they were looking for underwriters. I had no idea what underwriters were. And I went down, I interviewed with Chubb Insurance Company. At that interview, I found out what an underwriter did. Even though I did not get the job, I found out that Cincinnati Insurance Company was looking for underwriters. I walked in to the interview with the HR director. He was the VP of HR. And he said, we're looking for underwriters. Do you know what an underwriter is? And I said, yep, underwriter is somebody that does risk selection, risk rejection, risk modification. He looked at me, he said, how do you know that? And I said, I wanted to differentiate myself from everybody else who walked in the door. And I got the job. And this kind of gets back to what I'm thinking about when it comes to InsurGrid. So I'll get back to that in a second. But I think what I did is I differentiated myself from a lot of other people that walked in for interviews. I knew what an underwriter was. Worked for Cincinnati Insurance Company for about 4 years. After that, I went to work for Marymount Insurance as a producer, worked for them for about 7 years, and then hooked up with Hauser, and I became what they called an account executive. And it was kind of a producer slash service role, if you would. And the way that Hauser works is they do direct investments into companies, and then what we do is we go in and we manage the insurance program. So we work through private equity firms as well as venture capital firms. We invest in those PE firms. We invest in those venture capital firms. Then when they go in to make investments, they bring us in to manage the insurance programs. So I had a book of business, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 750,000 to $1 million in revenue. And after a while, I went from being an account executive to VP of commercial lines, and then eventually president of corporate risk. And so I've been in this role for probably about, 10 or 15 years. Our footprint is much greater than Cincinnati. As a matter of fact, we have very little business in Cincinnati. Most of our business is well beyond the greater Cincinnati territory. We've got business in Oregon and Washington, the state of Washington, down in Texas, California, Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, blah, 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 blah. So we do business nationally as well as internationally. We have clients that have places in Germany, Italy, Great Britain, France, Czechoslovakia, Australia, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little bit about me and where we operate.
Awesome. No, thanks for giving me. I didn't know about your start into the industry.
Yeah, that's how I got started. Yeah.
That's a great story. And so obviously you're my Uncle Joe. My parents, both run an insurance agency in Cincinnati. And so, you've been a part of the Beach family insurance history. I'm curious if you have any interesting stories maybe that you can share about being part of the Beach family insurance legacy.
Yeah, I got a lot of interesting stories, but none that I could share.
Fair enough. That means it must have been a good time. So getting back on track here.
Absolutely.
So InsurGrid, obviously we're a technology. We built technology for agents. And how have you seen technology progress, focused on agents throughout your years?
Yeah.
Getting us today of like, where are those gaps?
Yeah, it's interesting you're asking me that question, Chase, because yesterday we had a demo with Zywave, which is kind of a platform that allows my commercial account executives to go in and pull up safety programs, loss programs. They call it a broker briefcase. So there are two sides to that. There's our ability to shoot information out to a client. So if a client comes to us and says, I've got this fleet of 350 vehicles, I want to put in a driver training program. We have the ability to take this out of this broker briefcase, put their name on it, our name on it, and get it out to them, and they incorporate that into their safety program, their fleet safety program. The other way that it works is that if they want, they can come in through a portal in our system and they can look up their own information. So let's say, for instance, I got an HR director who's worried about slips and falls out on the factory floor. They can come in through our portal, take a look at our library, and pull up information. They can extract it, implement it, and then get their HR director, get their people on the floor to use it. So I think what's happened is over the last few years, that for us, technology has been a real differentiator. And I continue to use that word, but I think that, as always, the insurance industry is extremely service oriented. And if you can provide an additional service or an additional program that another broker is not providing, then I think you have a step up. And I think technology over the last few years has come a long, long way. I remember I used to have this software system that allowed me to put together proposals. It was very simple, very archaic, but boy, compared to what we have now, it's like night and day. And that was just the beginning. That was probably, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. It's come so much further. And even when I think about Zywave, where they are now, because we had them a while ago and we dropped them because we didn't think that they were moving fast enough. We didn't think they were good enough. But we just picked them up again because they've increased the toolkit that they've got available to brokers. And again, I think that's kind of what differentiates some of us, hopefully differentiates a lot of us, from one broker to another.
Yeah. Differentiation. That's really, really interesting. I mean, and obviously you participate in the commercial world, but the same thing on the personal lines world. You're all competing. And so it's all about, how can you set yourself apart from your competitors, and how can you do it in a service oriented way? And Joe, I know you work a lot with Liberty Mutual, and you were telling me you were on the agent board, talking about how we can make agent experiences better. I'm just curious, like, those conversations are probably really interesting, and I'm curious some of the things you might be talking about, thinking about, when in terms of what we can be doing to help our fellow agents.
Yeah. So again, I think it gets down to just making things a lot easier. And I'm going to go back to Zywave, and then I want to get into InsurGrid for a second, because Zywave, they have a product. It's called, I'm going to refer to it as a commercial rater, but we have a SBU, small business unit. And I think our individual that manages that has something like, 400 or 500 accounts. And what this commercial rater does, it allows her to go in and rate one business owner policy, but out of that, she'll get a quote from 5 or 6 different carriers. And I think what that does is that just makes it a lot easier for us to provide our quotes to our clients. One of the things I think about InsurGrid, one of the problems that we always have with some of our clients is you go to them and you say, okay, give us all your policies or give us all your information. Even in the private equity world, a lot of times when these guys are doing deals, the last thing they want to do is talk about insurance, right? It's like they can do so many other things, but the last thing they want to talk about is insurance. And I know over the years, historically, we've always had a tough time getting a hold of personal lines information. So you've got a CFO who you're doing business with, and the CFO says, hey, Joe, I'd like you to take a look at my insurance. Like, okay, here's what I need. I need your copy of your policy, any loss information. I need all that. And he goes, all right, well, give me an email, send me an email, and I'll see if I can put it together. And a lot of times what happens is that just kind of languishes out there and it never gets anywhere because you know as well as I do that the CFO is busy running his business. He's not really he's not interested in gathering all that information. I think that's what makes a difference with something like InsurGrid. It takes all that work out of his hands and puts it in the broker's hand and lets the broker do the work for the client.
Yeah. And
as I've told you, when you get it to commercial, let me know, because we'll jump on that almost immediately, because to us that's a differentiator. If I can, many times in the past anyway, we'd walk into a client's office and he'd give us that big huge binder full of all the commercial insurance policies. But boy, would it be a lot easier to just go in and mine that information right out of their insurance carrier's system. And again, I think from a personal lines perspective, that's what's made it a lot easier.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. We're going to keep you updated on that commercial.
Okay.
And so on the commercial side, obviously InsurGrid today, we make it very easy for agents to get those personalized deck pages, as well as getting the date of birth and driver's license number.
Yeah.
What type of world do you see where a company like InsurGrid could come into the commercial space? Like what does that world look like? What does the software do? How does it help your brokers?
Yeah, again, I think what it does is it takes a lot of the work away from the client and it puts it in the broker's hands. If I can walk into a client's office and say, I'll take care of everything. Yeah. All I need are policy numbers and we're done. And I think that in itself, as opposed to having to collect all that information, to go back to him time after time after time after time, it gets awfully clunky. And at some point, a lot of those CFOs are going to say, this is just too much work, man. I'll just stay with who I'm with. I'm not interested. It just takes too long. And if you can cut down on all that work, that in itself to me is once again that word differentiator. Yeah. It makes it a lot easier. And again, whether it's commercial or personal, yeah. I think if you can cut down on the amount of work that has to be done, that the client has to do, and you put it back in the broker's lap, and the broker can pull it out without a lot of trouble, I think that that in itself is a success, and it's a differentiator.
Yeah. All right. My last question.
Yeah.
To an agent, I talked to hundreds of agents, and, some agents, they'll just say to me, hey, Chase, yeah, this is great, but I'll just do it my old way. Or like, the way that I'm doing it right now is fine. And I'm curious if you were me, if you were in my shoes, or if you were, in the shoes, if you were that agency owner, what would you say to them?
Well, again, I think it gets back to you, a broker doing the work for the client. Again, whether it's a personal lines client or whether it's a commercial lines client, it doesn't matter. Or as we say, corporate risk. If you can look, the world that we live in today is so darn busy. And you know as well as I do that the CFO who we're normally dealing with, or the CEO, or the risk manager, is being inundated with so many other things to do that they don't have time to do all these things. And if you can take some of that out of their hands and become their risk management team, if they don't have a risk management department, or they don't have a risk management individual, and you become their risk management department, again, that to me is a differentiator. And I think that's what makes the difference.
Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Well, John, you've been listening to us go back and forth and me asking Joe a lot of questions. I'd love, if you had any comments, concerns, questions, from listen to us go back and forth.
Well, it's all about technology. It's interesting because we had Xywave a number of years ago and felt the same way Joe did when he bailed, that, it was just kind of it was there and it was stagnant, and they would add some here and there. So I'll have to go back and take a look at that again. But, it's funny because agents started freaking out a couple years ago when, with the InsurTechs starting to come out, and they're like, oh, this is the end of the agency, and I'm like, no, this is the beginning of agency 2.0. When you have the technology, first of all, the InsurTechs are not insurance agencies, they're not insurance companies, they're technology vendors that happen to specialize in the insurance world. And we're starting to see some of these platforms that were customer facing portals are now turning around and they're coming into the agency side, because let's face it, we write better business than they do because they don't underwrite what consumers go direct online to. So it's a different world. But
yeah,
for us to be able to tap into whatever part of the automation seeking public that we want, just opens the doors for us to get a piece of that action. 20 years ago, whatever it was, 25 years ago, when Progressive started targeting direct, again, everybody was like, oh, that's the end of the agency world. And, they've taken some market share, but as a general rule, that's not my client, so it's just differentiating what we do. And having technology to do that.
Yeah.
We're not, price is a factor, but it's not the factor. And when a consumer calls us and price is the factor, we bail real quick. I had someone the other day that called me and started in with, I've got 6 policies and I just need an agency to take care of this and be my agent. Will you AOR these? And I said, well, I have to take a look at it first and make sure that it's proper coverage for you. She immediately heard the next thing out of her mouth were, well, I don't need your opinion. I know why you're shopping for agents. I'm not going to be a fit for you, lady.
Right.
So
yeah.
But I'm excited about technology. I've always been a tech guy, and honestly, the last 10 years have been stale. I mean, nothing new has happened except the technology, the big technology vendors got bigger, not because they made better products, but they bought better products. You're so big, you can't create something new. You have to buy it. There's, potentially problems there, but it's there's been a lot. Well, in fact, Xywave was acquired here not too long ago, and they made some acquisitions, and then I believe, if I remember right, they got acquired. So
you're right. Yep.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. You got it.
Well, look at Tech Canary. They built a new AMS on Salesforce, and it was such a threat, it got bought by one of the big boys and then stuck on the shelf.
It's interesting, the acquisitions in the space. I think there's just going to be more. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Well,
okay.
Uncle Joe Worrall. Thank you for
Chase, good seeing you. John, it was nice talking to you.
Stay warm.
Yeah.
Yes, enjoy that weather down in, both of you enjoy the weather out in San Diego and down in Florida. Geez, I'm jealous.
All righty, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining. Thanks again, Joe.
Sounds good.